Hey guys, it's me again. Today you guys wanted me to go over Dendro reactions as well as their use cases and team comps. For example, I know a lot of you guys are confused about burning and its uses, but don't worry, I'm going to cover all that in this video. Starting with burning and bloom. Now these are the only two reactions where you'd want to have the Dendro character stacking EM. Burning is probably not as lethal as you remember, but that doesn't mean it's useless. It deals pyro damage over time, but the reaction will get more damage ticks if a Dendro character triggers a reaction for some reason. Pyro resistance shred will also increase the damage. Burning is really good for setting up reverse melts for cryo characters like Ayaka. No amount of cryo I applied could overtake the pyro from burning, even though I have C2. I even tried adding a second cryo character, and even that didn't overtake it. The issue is you still need a pyro character to trigger burning off field, since a single burning reaction isn't going to be enough. So you're still going to be using Xiangling. Dendro Traveler doesn't work in burning teams since his burst explodes when it comes in contact with pyro, and Dendro doesn't react with cryo at all, so you can't change its form to prevent it from exploding. So Kale is our only option at the moment, and even then it's still hard to justify over running an animal character in the same slot. While burning is consistent, you lose all the other utility an animal character can provide, like grouping for example. Bloom is the Hydro Dendro reaction that results in a Dendro core being spawned. It detonates after a short duration, and you will take a minor amount of self-damage that thankfully doesn't increase based on your damage. The core can interact with Electro and Pyro to create other reactions, but for now, regular Bloom is only really used as supplemental damage in a freeze team. Since the cores take a while to explode, as well as the enemies being able to use them against you, just makes it not that great at the moment. At least an animal character like Venti can move them, but they are a lot better off if they're turned into the next reactions, Burgeon and Hyperbloom. They both do the exact same damage, the only difference is the element of the character that triggers them and the area of effect. Both do pure Dendro damage, so if someone on your team is running the new Dendro set, the reactions will do significantly more damage to the point where I can easily say they are the highest damaging transformative reactions. Hyperbloom is what happens when a Dendro core is affected by Electro. This includes Electro swirls from characters like Sucrose or Electro attacks from the enemy. The damage dealt is based on the trigger's EM and level. So for example, if Sucrose triggers Hyperbloom with an Electro Swirl, it will take into account her elemental mastery. It's purely single target, and it has very aggressive tracking towards the enemy, but if the enemy triggers Hyperbloom, the tracking will be notably less aggressive. Hyperbloom is pretty good, as it makes taser teams that were previously Copium much better. For example, Kuki is probably the best off-field Hyperbloom trigger right now, simply due to the AoE of her elemental skill, whereas Oz has a really hard time hitting the Dendro cores, and Beto's elemental burst only targets enemies, and her Constellation 4 doesn't hit them either. Only her skill and the initial hit of her burst can trigger them. Raiden is also pretty good at proccing Hyperbloom, since her elemental skill will angle itself to hit as many targets as possible, so EM/sub DPS Raiden isn't a meme anymore. Burgeon is what happens when a Dendro core is affected by Pyro. Again, that does include enemy attacks as well as things that do Pyro damage like Pyro Swirl, but not Overload, since Overload doesn't apply Pyro to the target. Burgeon, to put it frankly, is Overload but better. It does more damage and it doesn't do any knockback. However, it does do a minor amount of self-damage. Just like other AoE hit scan reactions like Swirl or Overload, it is capped at 2 damage instances per target. Burgeon allows for the lesser used Pyro characters to shine, like Tomo for example, who is pretty good at proccing Burgeon. But hear me out, you could just use Xiangling.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
Both Guoba and her burst can proc Burgeon reliably, and with an EM Sans and Ketane Crossbeard to deal with her energy problems, she can run a hybrid build that can do Vaporize and Burgeon at the same time. You can also proc Burning with this team as well, but those will eat your vapes. But I'm not gonna lie, with a Burgeon team, you really want to have more Hydro application than you do Pyro. And it's really hard to do that with a single off-field Hydro character if you're going for both Vape and Burgeon. But if you want, you can get really crazy and you can run Razor with a C6 Bennett, as well as Xingqiu and Dendro Traveler, and you can proc Hyperbloom and Burgeon at the same time, as well as a bunch of other reactions. Now let's talk about Quicken, Aggravate, and Spread. These are a new type of reaction called catalyzed reactions, but for the most part, they're kind of all the same reaction that do slightly different things, and it probably doesn't work the way you think it does. When Dendro comes in contact with Electro, it creates the Quicken reaction. Dendro hits after Quicken will apply Spread, and Electro hits after Quicken will apply Aggravate. The reactions increase the damage of Electro and Dendro respectively, and it does so by adding to the flat damage portion of your final damage. You've probably heard something along the lines of it works similar to Shenhe or Yunjin's buff, but that's only half true. Instead of increasing the damage of every every hit after the reaction is triggered like some kind of debuff, because that would actually benefit all Electro characters. It only increases the damage of the hit that triggers the reaction, and that's it, which means ICD matters. Now, who does this help? Well, it turns out it helps literally everyone except Raiden, Electro Traveler, and maybe Beta, all for similar reasons. All of them don't have a way to make ICD work in their favor, so they don't trigger aggravate as much. And in Raiden's case, her high multipliers don't really benefit from it that much at all. And that's because aggravate will take into account your EM, your crit damage because the reaction can crit, and even your levels, everything except your attack. That's why you're seeing Kujo Sara and aggravate teams instead of Bennett. But that doesn't mean attack suddenly goes out the window. You should still pay attention to your overall damage and not just your aggravate hits. After all, the aggravate bonus is only a small part of your final damage. For example, my Dendro Traveler still does more spread damage with Bennett than with Sucrose. Now that may be because we don't really have any dedicated Dendro buffers other than Dendro Traveler himself, so let's look at Fischl. Since my Sucrose can now reduce electro resistance as well as give Fischl damage bonus with her C6, she pulls ahead. So a general rule of thumb is the lower the multiplier, the more it's going to want to lean more towards EM than attack. Like Tainari, who literally does nothing without spread, and that's why he can get away with running 3-star weapons like Slingshot and still do decent damage. The Quicken Aura also has some weird properties, like instead of doing reactions with the elements on the target, you actually do your catalyzed reactions with the Quicken Aura itself. So as you can see, even though the Primo Geo Bishop has Dendro on him, because he has the Quicken Aura on him, I can still proc spread. But the strange things don't stop there. The damage increase from aggravate will also affect other reactions like Swirl. For example, my Sucrose has 1100 EM thanks to Dendro Traveler, and she does 14k swirls when she triggers aggravate. This is only possible because the reaction also applies Electro. Sadly, there are no Dendro reactions that also apply Dendro, so you can't trigger spread through other reactions. Anyway guys, that's all for me. I want to thank you guys for watching, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.